What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'll talk about some key levels to watch for on the SPY chart right now and what's happening to the data that just came out. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of the stock, or deposits $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. That includes a 3.6% APY base rate plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months. And the offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks, so please check out my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the stock market. So, looking at the SPY chart, we pumped and started to dip a little bit at this resistance near 670. And because 670 is failing us so far, we're watching 668.29 as support. If that fails us, I'm looking for a move back down towards the 665s. So there is a chance SPY does dip a bit now after we just got our data. We were holding up very nicely yesterday, but so far the market's chopping up here, and we're going to see if we get a rejection. Why is that? Well, we just got the PPI data and we got some employment numbers. The ADP employment change is showing a loss of 13,500 on a weekly basis. This is once again worse than the previous numbers. Then we got the PPI data. PPI month over month, so this isn't wholesale inflation for the month of September, was at 0.3%, which is aligned with expectations. Then we have core PPI month over month at 0.1%. That's a little bit below expectations. Core PPI year over year is at 2.9%, somewhat above expectations. And then PPI for all items is at 2.7%, aligned with expectations. So everything's very close to expectations, except core PPI year over year is a little bit elevated. Not too bad though. And then retail sales are very close to expectations, but month over month they are a little bit lower than what we saw previously. Now, moving forward, I just want to mention that we have some housing pricing data coming out at 9 o'clock a.m., which is minor. But then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's 30 minutes after the stock market opens, we have consumer confidence alongside the Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index, manufacturing shipments, and the services revenue data all coming out. Look for some volatility at 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 30 minutes and 1 hour after the stock market opens. There's going to be some volatility with all this data coming out, especially the Richmond Fed manufacturing and services numbers. So look for volatility half an hour after market open once all this data comes out. Now, some more news to talk about is that Meta is in talks to spend billions on Google AI chips. And the information reported is basically what is going to be causing some more volatility, at least for Google, because this is great news for them. And simultaneously, this is helping Google's chips to get more exposure and potentially even challenge NVIDIA's market dominance, according to reports. Now, why is that important? Well, we are seeing, Meta trying to push and Google trying to push as a result of this news. And with the competition for NVIDIA, we are seeing NVIDIA dipping a little bit, but it's not too bad. We'll be watching to see if we hold some key support. Now, besides that, I think that we had Kohl's beating earnings. The share price is up quite a bit. Also, Best Buy beats earnings. But we're going to see what happens with the rest of our other retails out there. Besides that, we're seeing the same headlines involving Meta and Google and such. And that's pretty much it. I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy right here on the news. And a couple more things, just as a reminder, September non-farm payrolls were up about 119,000, more than expected. And at the same time, the weekly data was a little bit weaker, and that's what's concerning the Fed, which is why we have lots of Fed speakers calling for a cut in December, which was a little bit more bullish news. Besides that, there's not really much else for earnings. Kohl's and Best Buy are both seeing their share prices soar with good earnings. So what's happening to the stock market? Well, honestly, guys, if you want to be bullish, I would like to see SPY hold 670. If 670 breaks, we're looking for a push for essentially 675. But I need to see us hold 675. If we can't hold above that and we reject near 670, And if we end up losing the 668, I think we could be revisiting the 665s. We need to lose 665 to be a little bit more bearish, and then we could be dipping to like 661 or below if this rejects. So to me, when you look at the 30 minutes time frame, we're choppy right now. We're just seeing a lot of choppy price action. We may see a lot of chop here between 668 and 670, but whichever direction we end up breaking will cause a much bigger move. And there is a risk of us now dipping because we start off up like 0.2% on SPY only to dip back down. And we're very flat right now. So if 668 fails, us do anticipate us to dip closer to 665. But if 670 breaks, we should be pushing higher. There is a risk of us dipping looking at the current setup. On the 4-hour basis, we're kind of like consolidating here. So there is a risk of us dipping back down to 665 and then back down towards, the lower 660s. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. On the QQQ, we're also rejecting a bit more. I think that this is because of Nvda. Also know that we were very close to this trend line right here. See how we rejected off this trend line. We're basically at the trend line. We're basically trading near the trend line and we're starting to reject again. So if we break and hold 605, we could be trying to push higher, okay, back up towards like 608 plus. But if we end up losing like 603, we could be tipping back down to 600 and 598. So look for 603 as our main support. If that fails us, I think the low 600s could be coming. There is a risk of rejection on the QQQ. It's showing some weakness compared to SPY because of what's happening with Nvda. On the IWM, we're in the middle. We need to hold above 242 to be bullish. If we lose 239, we could turn back down to 236. ES is at resistance. It needs to break 6750s to remain bullish. But if we lose at 6680, we could turn back down towards these lows at 6630. There is a risk of this consolidating right now. We're going to see if it rejects or not. It's still indecisive. However, NQ is showing some weakness. We push and start to reject it, but we need to hold above 24,855. If we don't, I'm looking for 24,717 or below for some downside. On Bitcoin, we need to hold above 87,000 and 88,900 to bounce. If we don't, we could be dipping lower back down to 85,000. Tesla could be rejecting here. We're going to see if 416 holds. If not, we're looking for 408 or below. For Nvda, we're dumping. We're down 4%. We're going to see if 174 holds. If it doesn't, there is this gap down here around 171. So be careful with Nvda. We're going to see if this holds. If not, the lower 170s are next. Apple's pumped. Now it's starting to dip a little bit. We're actually red in the pre-market. We're actually very flat, if anything. I said yesterday to be careful with Apple. There's some tough resistance at 277. We need to hold above 276 to continue to push. If we don't, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 272 and then 271. On AMD, we're on a downtrend. We're looking for 200 to hold. If not, we're looking for 198 or below. Coinbase is dipping a bit. We're going to see if we hold above 254. If we don't, we could be dipping back down towards 240. On Amazon, we're going to see if we could hold 225. If it does not hold, we could be tipping back down towards this 222 area. Meta is looking more bullish as a result of the news that came out. We pushed yesterday. We're also up in the after hours. We could push a little bit more for like 630, in my opinion. Google pumped. We're going to see if it rejects here. There's some tough resistance at 330. It's already up like 3.65%. So we're going to gap up on Google and on Meta. Google / Alphabet and Meta, but are we going to turn down after we gap up? I need to see us hold 332 to continue to push for like 335, but if we reject, we could be tipping back down towards 325 or below. And then for Microsoft, overall, Microsoft is showing some weakness. It may continue to retest these lows at 468 and 465. And last but not least, the VIX is dipping, but is the VIX about to bounce here? If we form a double bottom, if we hold 20, we could bounce back up to 21.36. But if we lose this, we could be dipping back down to 18.95. So we'll see if we bounce, and we'll give this the time it needs. With that being said, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Be very careful with the market. We're approaching some resistance, and there is a risk of SPY and the QQQ rejecting. But just know that tech, right, the QQQ is looking weaker than SPY. And as we're at this upper trend line, there is a risk of rejection now. I would say that this data that came out was not as impactful. Look for some volatility at 10 a.m. with the manufacturing numbers coming out. And we'll see if this news involving Nvda, Google, and Meta is going to be affecting things. I think that Meta and Google will gap up, but then we're going to see if they reject or not. And then Nvidia is already dropping, and that's what's really having a more profound effect on the QQQ. So if these tech stocks begin to drop a bit more, this could drag us lower. There is a risk of that, so be careful. And I think their odds of rejection is a bit more probable right now. We'll see how well we hold up, but just know so far there is some weakness. Thank you for listening, and peace out.